Good night.
No,
sorry.
Stuart, say, don't forget to subscribe to the Glasgow Doctor Who site.
Don't forget to subscribe.
To the Glasgow
Thank
Doctor
you so much for supporting us. Thank you.
Say.
It's not a bad episode, but
it could have been done better.
I don't know, I saw the episode twice before coming here and I still didn't quite get it.
I didn't hate it. There was lots of parts of it, like I said, that I liked, but it just didn't work in the end.
It was bathos rather than pathos. It just didn't quite hold.
For me, personally, it's the weakest one of the series.
Yeah, I agree.
I loved it.
This is maybe my favourite episode of Shooty's era, RTD2's era so far.
It was nice seeing having an episode all about stories, having it be cultural, having it be educational, having it be brilliantly acted from beginning to end. You really do feel just kind of absorbed in it.
There was a lot about the setup for the episode that I just adored.
I liked it being set in Nigeria. I thought it was an interesting setting for Doctor Who, considering that really the Doctor only goes to London, Cardiff or Scotland.
It has been a type of story that Shooty's been wanting to do for a very, very long time because he has background himself.
It was a personal story for Shooty and I really liked that. I liked the bit when the Doctor's like greeting everyone in the markets. I thought that was really lovely.
I love Gatwa walking about the marketplace, and I do say Gatwa because that was not the Doctor. That was Shooty Gatwa wandering about being charisma incarnate.
It is nice when a Doctor, or at least when the Doctor's actor, can bring something to the story and to the show in general, and I think this was something that Shooty did really well.
The set work is amazing. It is so wonderful to hear that only the establishing shot at the start was actually filmed in Nigeria and the rest of it was filmed in sets in Cardiff.
They crammed the small space and had about 60, 80 odd extras all crammed in that space.
All in that.
To really home in on it.
To really...
And like the well, they really got the expertise outside to check everything and double check everything and make sure they do everything correct.
It is perhaps some of the best set and scenic work throughout. It's just the marketplace in itself is a remarkable achievement. The amount of supporting artists that are in it, the amount of stalls, the way that it has been lit. I mean, my God, it looks like you've got the bright African sun outside above all these stalls. It's just absolutely masterful.
The set that they built for the barbershop is beautiful. It's the colouring, the place that they put everything in. It looks great.
Inside the barbershop, you've got all these little posters, all these little notes. You've got scuffs on the little tile floor. It's amazing. It feels so lived in. It feels so real.
This is the new series. Is the house on Allen Road from, say, the Virgin Adventures, or some place that the Doctor can go home in some way. And I really like that idea. And the idea he also personifies that by being in the barbershop in his own mind to hold all the Doctors in. I just really love that idea.
Just the cultural accuracy of things like the murals, and moving on from that into all those little drawings and paintings that you see accompanying all the different stories that get told inside the barbershop. Again, it's just one of those wonderful things that help add to that sense of culture, adds to that sense of setting, adds to where Doctor Who is going this week.
The storytelling part was probably the best part of it. Like seeing the person when they tell the story, seeing that come to life in like the window. I thought the artwork was very good and it was like very immersive in a way.
It was very well cast, I thought. All of the characters I thoroughly enjoyed. Like as soon as you saw them, you just kind of enjoyed watching them.
The guest cast all around are just amazing. Ariel Bakar is amazing as the barber. He plays Shooty as good as he gets, and there's just a ferocity there.
I hope I'm not butchering this by saying this, but the whole black representation in it as well, it was really well done.
We've had cultural stories, but never one where the Doctor can actually, it's not had people, but because of the generation he's in, he finds a sense of belonging.
Although there's probably lots of places that you can go across the whole universe where the amount of pigmentation and your skin and the texture of your hair and all these details about yourself would be completely irrelevant. He's always had that connection with planet Earth, so it makes sense that he would then connect with blackness.
Earth is the place he feels the most significance to, and right now, in the body that he's in, Nigeria is one of the places he feels most at home, and Inua sort of tying it into other work he's done, like the Barbershop Chronicles. One of the places that men in Nigeria feel most comfortable is the barbershop. That whole idea of community and vulnerability and being able to tell stories not just of one's own personal life, but that have inspired aspects of one's own belief and one's own personal life.
As the human species, we are storytellers by nature. We tell ourselves stories all the time. We ourselves, from a philosophical degree, are a story. Your identity, to a certain degree, is just a story you tell yourself.
Yeah.
The setup was so nice, and then I'm sorry, it just, for me, it just didn't make any sense. What was the World Wide Web? What was the big spider?
Never actually sure how the guy is meant to have betrayed the Doctor by summoning him, given the guy in no way contacts the Doctor. The Doctor turns up there himself.
Oh, he feels betrayed by the fact that they just want to get out. Even though it's understandable why they want to get out, it doesn't take away from the fact that it will hurt him. And it's just that really great moment between him and Omo, where he's sort of pinning Omo down on the fact that he was just going to abandon him and how hard that hits him. It's one of the greatest moments that I think Ncuti has played in the whole series.
For me, like, the whole thing about the spider in space just felt like it was sort of awkwardly tacked on. It didn't really feel aesthetically coherent with the rest of the episode.
If your story is about a massive spider crawling along an intergalactic spider web with a Nigerian barbers on the top, which is powered by stories, you cannot also say things like checking the calibration of the engines and talking about battery levels. There's techno babble and there's story babble. You can't put them together.
The World Wide Web, mechanical, you said the mechanical spider. Mechanical spider was cool. I will admit that.
If you want a big robotic spider in your story, go nuts, I guess. Got Disney, but yeah, I just don't think it makes sense to me that it's a spider.
Almost like someone was given an element that they had to include in the story and didn't really want to, and that wasn't the original idea.
Did it need to be a spider? Could it not be like a train or a car or a bus or like a spaceship?
I expect that actually might be the case, that this is an element that had to be included because of its relevance to the larger series-wide story arc, because it just didn't feel like the whole World Wide Web giant spider thing was meant to be here.
There were a few things about this episode where I get what they were going for, but maybe the execution could have been better. Like, for example, the barber himself.
I feel like the kind of reveal of the barber was a bit of a kind of non-event. You know, it was this build-up to this reveal, and it turned out really to be nothing.
Here is a villain who is actually just a bit of a misunderstood person who just wishes they'd had credit for their stories, and now their stories have gone on without them. It's a little bit death of the author in the sense that they've laid down the foundations of these stories and they've kept on going without them to the point where they're obscured in the perception of them. And it's just been really interesting to sort of look at that and go, oh, there's an understandable character.
I definitely got why he was doing what he was doing, but I think his backstory was a little bit muddled in how he was saying, I was human like you, and he created this story engine for the gods, and I don't know. I just thought that was a bit muddled.
He's been called all these names, and then all these weird images come up, and it looks a bit AI generated. To
Dionysus and Loki.
Yeah,
and Nancy.
It's like you could have put a story into it, and then him saying that he's mortal now, even though somehow he made the spider in his pelvis. But does that mean spider's more powerful than him? I don't know. I don't get it.
I don't know.
Everything previously about the Pantheon has been the terrifying, alien, unknowable, unfathomable things which the Doctor, you know, he is like the Doctor's new great enemy. And now apparently off screen, they're now a great bunch of lads where the Doctor has hung about with them. The Doctor has got drunk with Dionysus. The Doctor has hung about with Anansi. And all these people, and it's like suddenly he's telling anecdotes about them the way he does about, Benjamin Franklin and William Shakespeare.
Are we at the point where gods are just commonplace in Doctor Who now?
Suddenly they are just people. They're just famous people from the past. And that is not what they were. That was not what my show was. That is not what Lux was. That is not what the Toymaker was. You were terrified of them. They were from another universe. They obeyed different laws, and you did not know how to handle that, Doctor. And that was really quite a good innovation. And if this means suddenly that's gone, and we're back to just being, they're just baddies, I'm genuinely quite disappointed with that.
The other thing that really didn't work about it, I don't think these gods that they're talking about are members of the pantheon led by the Toymaker. I think it's a different pantheon. Although there seems to be a bit of confusion about that tonight. Not everyone thinks so, but for me, I don't think that's more members of the pantheon. I think that's now a completely different thing. For me, that's a wee bit confusing.
I know Doctor Who has dealt with gods before, bar the Toymaker during Hartnell's time, but the gods were kind of more like aliens that were revered by a culture or society.
Now they've just introduced the element of actual gods, holy, there are actual gods in the universe. That was a big deal. And now suddenly they're like, oh yeah, and there's all these other gods as well. And the Doctor's met them previously and he knows about it, and it's just part of the universe. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's a shame that Belinda doesn't do much.
This could be a companion-like episode.
If you remove Belinda, it doesn't change much.
No, it doesn't.
The only thing she contributed was saying to Abby that hurt people.
Hurt people, and it's like, Belinda, you've just arrived. You do not know, you barely know who these people are. You've spent most of the episode in the TARDIS telling us, oh, is this a red alert? As red lights flash up and down walls.
What she felt like was, in the Peter Davison run, it always felt like one of the companions had to stay in the TARDIS because they didn't know what to do with them.
Exactly.
And then she got out of the TARDIS, she went into the market to look for the Doctor, she accidentally knocks over that vendor, which was a cameo by the writer, and she was like, sorry, I don't have money, and then the policeman was like, alright, who did this? And Belinda just put her hand up. I was like, okay, looks like she's going to be holed up in some police station, and that'll explain why she's out of commission from the episode, therefore making it into a companion-like episode. But then the next time we saw Belinda, she was in that alleyway, and I'm like, what?
She really didn't serve a purpose except in the flashback.
In the story that 15 tells in the barbershop, he doesn't go for something big and he goes for something grand. He goes for, quite aptly, as someone who calls himself the Doctor, a story of a nurse caring for people.
I thought that was very sweet. I thought that was very, very sweet. I don't know, I think that flashback was there to just show how good of a person Belinda really is.
It's very specifically Belinda's story. It wouldn't work without her character, her personality and her profession.
It's a great link to him, the nurse and the Doctor, but it's also a great showcase of something that's been cropping up quite well with Belinda, is her sense of care, her attention to detail, her knowledge.
There are examples of fantastic companion-like episodes.
It's just such a shame that we're only getting 8 episodes. Last episode, she wasn't in it barely. She was in it for 5 minutes, maybe even less, and then she leaves. And because it's only 8 episodes, I don't know, I feel like we're not going to get as much as connected to Belinda.
I would like to see a bit more of the fugitive Doctor, but it was nice to have a little cameo.
She's just brilliant. You give her 4 lines and it works. You give her 5 lines and it works. She's just a master at hitting things so brilliantly.
I think she is brilliant as this other more kind of ruthless, kind of hardened version of the Doctor.
And somebody said it to me, and I can't remember who, and I apologise for not being able to credit whoever it was that said it on Twitter, but she doesn't change to suit the mood of the room. She remains as she is, and the room warps around her.
If you look at the fugitive Doctor and then look at the First Doctor, you can kind of see where that grumpy, grandfathery, not trusting people comes from.
And I've got to say, Joe Martin coming back for even just a brief little moment has just been a glorious joy. A wonderful surprise, I hope, for most people.
I stupidly opened my phone. So I saw the selfie of Ncuti Gatwa and Joe Martin together on set, and it spoiled that for me. And I felt like in the end, for other people that weren't spoiled, it didn't make much difference to the episode.
Well, that's it.
But I feel like it would have been a nice little thing for me to have seen, and I think it took away from the episode for me
But
a
I
little
will say
bit.
that me and Robert weren't spoiled for that, and we just didn't think it was that exciting because she appears and then she basically says, "Hey, we might actually tell you more about me at some point," and then she doesn't.
Like the cameo of the Ruth Doctor, it didn't feel it should be there. It didn't really add to the episode.
Ncuti's Doctor shouldn't have the memories of the Ruth Doctor unless that's going to be a plot point, but instead it just felt like it just was a plot hole.
The 13th Doctor just put the fob watch deep in the TARDIS, so there's no way she could have known. But then again, the 13th Doctor did say, unless I really ask for it, so I don't know, maybe off screen the Doctor probably took a wee peek at some of the Fugitive Doctor's adventures, and that's why.
I don't know if Ross is going to explain it where, because the 15th Doctor's been split from the 14th Doctor, that the 15th Doctor might have these memories.
Possibly.
But if that is the case, then it's not really...
Not really explained to us.
No.
I don't think it makes sense, given if he doesn't have those memories, how would he know that happened?
In that case, then 15 saying to Ruby in the Goblin King episodes that he doesn't know where he came from, he should know, because then he would have the memories of being a kid.
I do get that if you're telling a story where the Doctor was gambling for the life of a black woman, the least bad Doctor for that story to be told by is the Fugitive Doctor.
The script writing comes from a place of theatricality, just the way it's written, the way it's shot, the way there is this focus on characters, and even just on the whole idea of having this very constrained setting. And I think actually for Doctor Who that's running at about 45 to 50 minutes, sometimes you need to just sit down and predominantly in one setting with a couple of characters and make it work.
I think part of the thing is that if you're going to do a story that's very heavy on talking and very light on action, which is a valid choice, you then have to have a really strong sense of character. And I thought this had a very strong sense of place, but not so much a strong sense of character. Like, I didn't feel that those other men in the barber shop had a very developed sense of who they were.
Two of these characters needed a bit more of a distinct personality, because you had the happy one, well, you had the angry one, you had two fairly happy ones, and then the older shopkeeper. Like, I feel like I guess it's those two characters who could have been a bit more distinct.
What I liked about RTD's first run was that you had some two-parters, so that gave stories room to breathe. Both the last series and this series they need two-parters, because mostly every episode feels rushed at some point.
In the first viewing, I found it very difficult to follow. Jim and I had to piece together what was being said.
Like, maybe finding out that the spider was like an engine all along, and who the barber was. I felt maybe instead of rushing it, they just could have maybe just took room to breathe.
If it's difficult enough for Doctor Who fans to understand the story, then the kids are not going to really understand it, which is a shame, because Doctor Who is made for kids.
Yeah. The story just felt really confusing, and it was long-winded, and it was very talk-based. And I think that as a family show, as a show that is meant to be for the whole family, including the children, and it was originally a children's show, it was not only not action-based, it was so laboriously talky. Afterwards we heard people saying online that their kids were just talking over it within 5 minutes and weren't really interested.
I don't know as well if more people would have been on board if they went and read the other story, because I know the reason I know about it is because I got it through the email. But apparently there was an online story that connected to this.
And it's a story you can read apparently on the Doctor Who website, which is a lovely little tie-in. So it's also a prequel and a sequel, because you can either read it before the episode or read it after, which is quite crafty.
This episode would have been amazing if each character in the barber shop had told stories, and that had been like a little vignette in the middle of the episode. And that basically, I think the episode would have been amazing if it had been like 4 or 5 vignettes of like a really cool story from each person's life, very viscerally told, which then ended in the last like 5-10 minutes being like the actual story.
I've got a feeling they're setting up for what's coming, because if you look at the whole idea of the web and the storytelling and the power behind that, I think that's all setting up and tying into the reality stuff.
Why was the story set in 2019? Because that was said in passing quite briefly, but that's sort of oddly specific for me. I assume that means that the story is going to be revisited and it's going to be important that this happened 6 years prior.
See the child
Oh, yeah.
that was seen?
Yeah.
That's Poppy from Space Babies.
I mean, it gives me hope that this is all going to be tied up in a really interesting way. Who knows? Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that, because I will say that if you haven't been following the multi-series arc and you didn't watch Space Babies, you're just going to be like, wait, what happened to the girl? Which isn't great if you're already wondering, wait, what happened to Belinda being reprimanded in the marketplace, and how does the guy, like, do these gods have anything to do with the other gods? Do you know what I mean? Like, it actually, I feel that it was deliberate, but if you weren't really following along, it actually just adds to the confusion.
You wouldn't get that unless you've been watching the show kind of religiously.
Yeah.
I didn't make that link.
No, neither did I until.
Somebody to explain that to me
Yeah,
tonight.
until yesterday I'd seen like an Instagram post being like, "Oh, this is the same kid." I was like, "Huh," because I don't know if it's going to be a continuous thing or, as the doctor said, it's like the memories leaking out.
Yeah.
Go to do the whole 360 and tying everything into this reality more. Go right from that very beginning. Oh, we're going back and forth, been there from the beginning. They're tying it, they'll be pulling the string in.
It was enjoyable. I feel like for a fan, the confusion outweighs the good parts. I don't know how kids are going to feel about it, because as I said earlier, if kids can't understand it, then are they going to really enjoy it?
Yeah.
I just find it so refreshing to have something so original again.
I thought it was a very different episode, something that we've not seen done before.
Having things like the well, it's good, but you know, it's the Midnight Monster, you know, we're doing sort of Love and Monsters again, but with, you know, far right characters. This was just something completely different, completely original, with a brilliant sort of insight into folklore within Nigeria and West Africa.
God, it's been absolutely a treat, perhaps one of the, not just the highlights of the Bad Wolf run of Doctor Who, but perhaps one of the best stories that we've had since the show came back in 2005.
Probably my favourite episode so far of RTD2, of Shoot the Gatwa. Let's see after a few watches, and it's going to be my favourite episode of New Who in general.
This is what Doctor Who needs. It needs this streak, and it needs to keep that streak going in order for the show to be revived in a way.
On that, this story kind of keystones this whole era. I think when Ncuti does eventually leave, whenever that is, this is a story that people will look back at and go, everything else sort of mavitates around this, everything else sort of fits to it, because it ties back to this whole idea of, the significance of ordinary people, as indicated in the whole life of Louise, Ruby's mother, and what that then became because people believed that she was a god. It ties into that whole idea of the fairy circle and 73 yards in one carefully placed image. It ties back into Space Babies with Poppy showing up for that brief little moment and whatever that may mean. And it also then wonderfully brings Jo Martin back for such a brilliant little moment that not only ties her in terms of being a black doctor who's already been in the show before, what that means in terms of ethnicity and in terms of culture and in terms of significance, but also what that means in terms of the Doctor's own past, in terms of stories that haven't been told and their potential significance. And what that also means is we get this tie back to eras gone by.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Glasgow Doctor Who Society YouTube channel.
Don't forget to support the YouTube channel and all the online media platforms that we use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Glasgow Doctor Who Society YouTube channel.
Between us, we've just about got that.